like to introduce everybody to Matt Muccigrosso. Did I say it right?
Close enough. Yeah, Muccigrosso.
Awesome. He is the writer of Xenoplicity, which is a role playing game. When did this role playing game come out, Matt?
Well, it's kind of a that's a story. We actually started working on this thing about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And yeah, and we initially released it. We kind of launched it after we put it together back in 2016 or 2017. It was around there that we first we actually put it out there for people to play with and to see. And to be honest, actually, initially it was much more of a story game, because my group has always been really big into role play, and so we wanted to try to get away from so much of the crunch and the mechanics that we thought was kind of holding us back. And in that initial system that we put the setting to, it definitely had its appeal. I mean, there were things about it that I still think are kind of cool, and it definitely had its own flavor and feel. It was something new. It was original. It wasn't like any other game that that's out there. But the problem is that after we actually put it out, long-term play with it, because we kept playing with it, after even after it was published, we kept having game after game after game. And what we found after several years of playing it was that it didn't hold up. Like it was difficult to run long-term games with that system.
Mm.
And part of the issue was is that parts of it just started to feel gimmicky, and we didn't like long-term progression with it. And so I thought, you know what, I don't like the way this is going. It never sold a bunch. Like, I'm a nobody. Nobody knows who I am, right?
Right.
So yeah, so just trying to get yourself noticed and get yourself out there, that's a huge undertaking. Even if you had the best game in the world that had no flaws or no issues, you still have to promote it and market it. You still have to do brand recognition. You still have to get your name out there, and that's a long task. And so I thought to myself, well, it's never really catched on. There's no reason to have this out there if I'm not happy with it. And so we pulled it down off of drive through,
Mm.
and we went back to the drawing board. And my mission statement was, I said, okay, look, I like role playing, and I think that there is a better way to role play than what I typically see when I hear other people talk about it, or when you see people play online.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of emergent storytelling. And the thing is no one does it, or very few people do. And most people, they want to spend several minutes narrating what they want to do, and then someone calls for a roll, and then the roll doesn't go the way that they want it to. And then it's like, well, that didn't really happen. So did you just waste everybody's time? How much of your breath did you just waste? How much time did you waste in the session talking about something that actually didn't even occur in the fiction?
Yeah.
And that always left a bad taste in my mouth. And the thing is, most games kind of follow a similar format to that because, for better or worse, a lot of them really borrow heavily from D&D. Not all. There are definitely games that break that mold and go in their own direction. I'm not saying there's not any innovation, but there's definitely, in my estimation, I think there's a lack of innovation in the hobby. I think people, they really get in this rut where they get comfortable playing one game. Maybe it's the game they were introduced to, and then they never try anything else. And so people, they kind of just keep on running with the same way they've always done it, and they don't ever really stop and think, is there a better way to do this?
Hmm.
And so I wanted to offer something different. And what I realized was that when I went so far into the story gaming part of that, I lost part of the game that most of my players and most of the people I play tested with, they were saying, I want more crunch. I want more. I want more. I do want more mechanics. I don't want everything to just be narrative. I want there to be, some substance to it. And so I thought, okay, well, how can I marry those ideas? And that's what I tried to do with this new system. The setting of Xenoplicity has remained largely consistent. Now there are some updates. I added more to it because we've been playing it now for another 7 years while
Hmm.
this thing has been going through play testing and refinement of the system. I mean, if you work on a game, you end up having to go back to the drawing board so many times, right? Like, there are so many good ideas, or you think they're good ideas, but then when you actually put them on the table and you start using them, you start doing them, you start realizing, well, this actually has X, Y, and Z flaws, like this doesn't work. Or 6 months into it, you're like, the system's breaking down after 6 months of playtesting. So there's a lot of going back to the drawing board, what works, what doesn't, and also just what people like, what people enjoy, right? Something may actually be a really good, clever system, but if the majority many people you share it with, if they scratch their head and they go, I don't like it or I don't get it, then
Yeah.
in and of itself, like, is it a good mechanic at that point, right? There has to be something where people they engage with it, and then after the end of the session, they give you good feedback from it,
Gotcha.
even if it doesn't necessarily have any flaws, right? And so, piece by piece, we put together this new system. Me and a couple of guys that I've played with for years, people I grew up with, and have known most of my life, and they're the other names that are on the cover of the book. Most of the work, most of the creation, it is my baby in that sense, but I couldn't have done it without their contributions. And so, I love having their names next to me on that cover, because to me, it's like a labor of love, and we're proud of the game. We're proud of what we put out there. And so
Cool.
after all this time, we finally got something where everyone that plays it, just they enjoy it. And that's the thing, like, because we every time we do a play test, we introduce someone new to the system. I give them pamphlets to fill out, questionnaires. What did you like? What did you not like? Compare this to other games you play. The feedback is phenomenal. So even though most people have never heard of my game, that doesn't mean it's not worth playing or trying out. And I think the majority of people that play, if you give it a chance, you're going to find that there's at least some parts of it that are going to blow your socks off. You're going to go, man, I never thought a tabletop role playing game would deliver this,
Mhm.
because again, so much of what we did for this game is different. It just we tried really to think outside the box, because we didn't want to just borrow from the D&D model. Um, there's plenty of clones and retro clones out there. I didn't want to just put out my own setting and just rely on a system that everyone already plays. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it just wasn't what I was going for when I designed Xenoplicity.
Yeah, yeah. You do see a lot of D20 clones coming out and that sort of thing. What I've noticed about Xenoplicity is you use something called the Q system, and analyzing it, it's kind of like a floating bell curve. Uh, when you put two dice together, and you're using a D12 or a D10 or a lower tier dice if you are doing more actions for your round, and and you have the secondary dice that comes in, which is the effect die, correct? And
Yes.
the combination of two, once again, creates this bell curve that can go up and down, but you can get kind of a predictability of what your outcome is going to be, kind of like what Traveler is, with the 2d6, which I find interesting. One thing I also see is that, yeah, with the fluctuating bell curve, there's also, you've got your successes and your descriptors of successes, which because yeah, what was the name of the descriptors? I don't have it offhand here, so I just have the first page here. It's
Yeah.
handy
So,
right here.
so what you're talking about is the degrees of success and failure, kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll go to page. I think it's page 16 here. Bring her up.
Yeah. So yeah, so your
Yeah.
target number, what you're trying to get, it again, this works differently than what you've seen in a lot of games.
Hmm.
And so the idea is that your the tens column of whatever, like, so when you roll those dice, you add them together, and that's going to give you your total that you would base your success or failure off of. This is the number you would tell the game master, okay, who we call the director. And the tens column actually determines your number of successes that you get for whatever it is you're rolling for. The ones column is going to determine the degree of success or failure. And so depending on what you roll, you're going to get so many successes, and then also maybe it comes with a positive or a negative, based on the result that you roll. And because it's not just like a set number that you're just trying to hit, you're not trying to game the system. At least that's what we see when people play it. It's not like, oh, okay, I just need to get an 11 or I just need to get a 12. I mean, the number actually fluctuates, and there's a degree where, for instance, if you had a 19, that's one success, but that's a nailed success, meaning that you gain an initiative token, right? So
Yeah.
you're building up momentum on your side for you. But if you got a 20, right, then you'd have two successes, but it's actually a hitch. And so this is when the game master, who we call the director, they gain an initiative token. And so, which is better? Well, it really all just depends. I mean, yeah, you're stacking up a little momentum in the enemy's favor, but technically you got more successes on that. So because there's that variation, really, no matter what you roll, it ends up sparking a lot of fun at the table. It really does. Um, and successes in this, you're ranging anywhere from 0 to 3 successes, and 3 successes, that's a lot in this game. In combat, a success is a point of damage. If you deal 1 point of damage to someone, that's enough to take out your average NPC.
Yeah.
The game doesn't try to make combat last an extended period of time. And in 3 damage, if you as a player character take 3 damage, that can be enough to kill you in one blow.
Yeah, I
So,
seen that. Yeah.
yeah, so I wanted something that would mimic and reflect what you see in TV shows and movies, right? Like, you watch Stargate, or you watch some of the Conan, right? Arnold
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger, that's the only good one. But you watch these movies and these TV shows, and you just see in them, like, every swing of the sword, someone's dropping, right?
Right.
You're
Yeah.
seeing arms and legs get cut off. Someone gets hit with a stunner, and then they're out. Like, there's no like, I got to hit them 4 or 5 times, right? You want combat to be quick and brutal. We find that makes the combat actually more fun and more engaging, right? And this is part of the problem I have with level-based systems in general, is that the more advanced you get, actually the slower everything runs, and the longer things take, and the more boring combat and really every part of the game gets.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that for my game. This is not a level-based game.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that. That was you've gone through a lot of aspects in your book here, which are very related to Traveler, which I find surprising, but cool. I'm very familiar with Traveler, as you know, and I tend to have it as my top game that I would ever play. Um, the only
I enjoy
reason,
Traveler
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. Now, for me, you have me intrigued with your first initial release of the game, from what you've described, and you know me as a game master that promotes more role play in my games, and having my players commit to driving the narrative. I would be interested in seeing your original version, because that sounds more like what I would love to take and play with. But this is a very interesting system, combining the dice and everything, which I think is cool, and I do like that idea that you can die very easily in this, which is a cool concept. The cinematic, awesome. I like that. This book, just by itself, I've seen so many charts and stuff in here of great ideas, and little cues that you can use for your own games, no matter what you play. This is a great resource book on its own. Even if you didn't use this system, it has so much in there that is just it's just like cool. There's some very cool charts in there that you can roll on and come up with your own random stuff. But yeah, this
Appreciate that.
yeah, I like the additional effort that you put into it on all those charts and ideas and stuff. I think that was really cool. Um, so some of the questions I have hooked up here to ask you. Let me bring it up again as soon as I find my cursor again. Um, so now we know what made you want to create your own game. Did you start homebrewing on a particular game that you thought that could use a boost of ideas, or reconfiguration for making it your own game, like what we call rule zeroing a lot of stuff and maybe putting in your own stuff? So
I
what's
have
your
I have house ruled every game I play to death. I rule zero everything. Any game that I play, I make it my own, and
right?
I always have. And the thing is like, I didn't start with D&D. A lot of people, that's their introduction to the hobby. I I guess I'm an outlier because that was
Oh, okay.
never my thing. We actually, me and my buddies, we started playing when we were like 11, 12 years old, and we started with the Fantasy Trip, an old Steve Jackson game.
Y-
And guys, like that game is like so simple. It's like literally like 20 pages in small print, just on a little pamphlet, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it's really just a combat simulator. I mean, it's on a hex grid, right? It's a 3D6 system. You can make a character in 1 minute or less. It's super quick, super easy. But it was our introduction to tabletop role playing. And what's interesting about that is we played that for years, but we were always open to try different things. And so I find it weird that so many people today, whatever it is they started with, they just become very close minded to even, oh, hey, what about something else? Like,
Hmm.
I've seen so many people comment in videos where they're like, oh, I can't get my players to try something new. And to that, I'm scratching my head going, man, that just was not my experience. I was always eager to open up a new book and to see like what was inside and like and how
Right.
it worked and how it was different from what I already did. And again, when we were designing Xenoplicity, I thought that was very important for me to do for my own game because, like you said, there's a lot of similarities in certain aspects to a game like Traveler, especially because parts of the game do involve space travel in starships and things like that.
Hmm.
So you can definitely see some influence there for my time playing Traveler in the past. But the other thing is that it is fundamentally a very unique thing. It's a player facing system, which I don't know how well that gets received among tabletop gamers. The thing is, the people that play it and then will try it out, they like it. They think it's fun, and the people that run the games, the reaction I get is it was easy, right?
Okay.
Because the game master wasn't worried about stats for NPCs or rolling dice for different situations. They were just focused on narration. They were focused on role playing, and having a player facing system allows for that. But there's not a lot of player facing systems that are very popular, and a lot of gamers I think are kind of like standoffish to try one out because it is so
Right.
different from what they've always played. Um,
So
I don't.
my understanding is you have within the turn, which is a 1 minute turn, you can do a lot in 1 minute. So which is an interesting thing. So what you are creating is basically an abstract of what could happen with the players announcing their actions and their desire on the action one after the other, and then you let them roll? Or how do you do the procedure of the turn yourself in the game?
That is a great question. So, actually, and this is on I think the first page of that chapter. So the way that a turn order works, I really wanted to fundamentally break this down into steps, so that way people could understand how the game works, and also to help teach a better way to do it. Because I think that this makes a lot more sense for at the table how to actually role play a session. And so when you're writing a book, especially a new game, you're thinking, how can I put this into words in a way where I can clearly get across what I want people to mimic? Because it's an instruction book, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
it's a textbook that's meant to teach you something and how to play this game, right? And you want people to play it in the same way, or at least the default should be the same, and then people can do whatever they want with it once they buy it and they practice with it and play with it. I fully anticipate people are going to take this and just make it their own, just like I do with every game. But I wanted people to have a default for something different, right? And
Okay.
so the format, the turn order that you see there is this is all happening simultaneously. All the players act at once during the turn. So we don't have turn order like you have in most other tabletop role playing games. Everyone is acting at the same time, and so this is one of the things that makes it so unique and so different because I have not seen this in another game before. This is one of the
Mhm.
things that I thought was a pretty cool idea. And when I put it into practice, it worked really well. So in step one, all the players are just going to announce they're like going to declare their intentions or announce like what it is that they're going to do in a vague sense. They're not going to go in specifics. They're not going to narrate it, right? So if there was a guy that was like up ahead on the street and you wanted to grab him, right? Like maybe it's someone you spotted that was spying on you and you wanted to grab him, so it would be sufficient to say, "I'm going to move and grab him." Right? And
Right.
then based on that, once you've taken into account what you're doing, and again, this is the player, this is not the game master doing this. Everyone at the table, it's incumbent on them to do this themselves. So
Yeah.
everyone is doing these things all at the same time. Everyone's rolling dice at the same time. They're all just, saying what they're doing, figuring out their dice pool, rolling their dice pool, and announcing their results all simultaneously. There is no turn order. We're not waiting for one person to go for someone else to go. Okay.
Right.
So you would say, okay, well, that's two actions. And then you would figure out what your ER rating is for, grappling someone while running. And then you're going to, that's going to determine your dice pool. You roll the dice and you announce what the result is. And everyone does this at the same time. And so the game master, the whole time this is happening, all they have to do is sit back and listen. They're just sitting back and taking in what everybody is doing and what the results are. And then
Right.
based on those results, the game master narrating the world and the NPCs, and each player chiming in and narrating their own player character and what they're doing, that you just narrated at the end of the turn. and
Okay.
and and you narrate and you role play out all the things that happen based on the dice results. Now it's
Gotcha.
important to note that this only the rolling of the dice and then narrating the results, this only comes into play if rolls are even necessary. So I mean, again, even though I put these things out in very clear steps, because again, I'm trying to teach people, like, this is the format, do it in this order, right? Declare intentions, do dice pulls, and then narrate the results. And that's what I'm going for here. If there's no roll necessary, if the game master says, yeah, you can just grab them, you don't need to roll for that, then the player can just narrate everything that happens with them chasing the person down and grabbing them. And again, that's going to happen over a minute of game time. So it's not just that you roll, or it's not that you just role play or narrate one single move, right? It's not that you're narrating 5 feet of movement and then one grab. No, it's, you can narrate this to the nines as much as you want over a minute of game time, bobbing and weaving through people, jumping over top of one person and then tackling them to the ground, right? You can narrate all of that, and it's just one turn. And at the end of that turn, 1 minute of game time has passed, and then you go on to whatever's next.
Okay. Cool. Cool. As for the actions of the monsters and stuff like that, as the game master, how do you determine all that?
Well, that's a great question. So step two is the act step, which is what we kind of just talked about, with everyone rolling their dice and then announcing their results based on, on what has happened. After that, there's a step three called saves. And the thing is that this may not even come into play. This is one of those things that may be an invisible step unless there's a reason for it to exist in the first place. And using that example, let's say there's a person in the crowd and you want to run up and grab them. Well, maybe, you grabbing them, that's not really a role. Maybe you're an athlete or you're really good at that and this person's not. And so the game master, he determines, you know what, that's not worthy of a role, so I'm just going to shut up and just let the guy do it. But maybe at the last second, that NPC whirls around and has a derringer and tries to shoot you while you're grabbing him, right? That would be a save, right? So during step three, right after the rolls have been made for the actions, during step three, you would make any additional rolls needed for saves, for things that might come up that you have to avoid or dodge or get out of the way, or anything like that, that would be a save, a reaction roll kind of thing.
Okay.
And so you could roll for that, and then again, that just gets filtered into the narration, right? So maybe you can grab them by default, that's not a roll, but you do have to avoid being shot, and maybe you fail that roll and so you get wounded, maybe you get grazed in the arm and so you've just got a minor wound in your arm. Well, then during step four of the narration, you're going to get to narrate all the things that you did, but adding into that, you're also going to be narrating, the NPC, shooting you in the arm and you grabbing your arm and, being covered in blood, or, oh man, it's just a graze, and, you would role play that as part of the fiction that's coming out of the emergent storytelling.
Hmm.
Um, so it really depends on whether roles are even needed. If not, then you're just going to go straight to the narration. You just declare the actions, and then if there's no roles needed, then you're just going to go straight to narrating what it all looks like for the turn. And if roles are needed, then you just use step two to roll those things out, and then step three for any additional things that haven't been rolled for yet. Because it is a player facing system, if you fail, and depending on the degree of your failure, those count as successes for the opposition to whatever you're doing. Now, not everything
Gotcha.
has an opposition. Sometimes a fail is just a fail, right? Especially if it's just something you're trying to do yourself. But if you're opposed an NPC and you critically fail, then that is the equivalent of the NPC getting a critical hit on you. And
Gotcha.
so this way, everything you do when you're rolling for something, it matters, because if you roll very poorly, well, then that means that the NPC has got you. They made an attack on you, and you stepped right into it, or you've been shot. And so again, all of these things are determined by that one roll. And so you don't need to make roll after roll after roll. I don't need to roll for all the NPCs in the scene plus all the player characters making rolls. The player characters are just making the players are making their rolls, and then based on the failures, I'm going to narrate the NPCs accordingly based on the degree of failure, how much damage gets dealt, or how successful the NPC was based on this. And then depending on the degree, the variation, it could be that both, you each get a success. Maybe both parties, you take some damage, but you also deal some damage. So
Right.
it's a give and take. It can go any way. It can go terribly against you, terribly, against the enemy, or both sides can be, suffering some hits and blows if you're dealing with something like a combat.
Awesome. Awesome. This so the game master doesn't actually do any in turn rolls. Very similar to Cipher system, which I am a fan of myself. So and I
Yeah,
see, yeah, and I see by your how you've done everything with basically one roll. It's actually probably going to be a little faster than Cipher would be if that's the case. Uh, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of Cipher system. I love Numenera and stuff like that. Have you ever played any of those games?
I know of it. I've never played it. I don't know anyone
Oh,
that
oh
has it,
boy.
and I've never
Yeah.
had a chance to play it at a convention or anything. No.
Yeah, yeah. I know that there is a lot of pushback on game masters not being able to handle the dice. So that's been my uh, what I hear as feedback to from other players. But for me, as a game master, not rolling the dice is something one thing less for me to think about while I'm trying to think up new things for my players to in interact with as the narration continues on through the players. So I'm always
I
thinking of
agree.
little things that I can pull out from what they're talking about and add it. And I break all these things down and I use them later on as my little gotcha moments, that my pushes that I call. So
Yeah,
uh,
you know what? I 100% agree with that, because when if you're sitting down and you're thinking, does anyone at the table want to watch you roll dice
yeah.
as the game master, right? Like, because at the end of the day, like, everyone's just sitting around staring at you while you're rolling dice for the NPCs. I just don't find it as engaging as if you as the game master are just listening. You're listening to the results that the players are rolling, and then you are focused on narration, you are focused on role play, you're focused on presenting these NPCs, or whatever they are, monster, whatever it is you're dealing with. You're focused on playing them up, right?
Hmm.
Something I say in the book, and this is super important to me, is the what makes an NPC important is not their stats. It's not the abilities that they have. It's how you role play them. And so to me, the focus, if you're going to make an engaging game, you want the focus to be on the action, whatever that is. It doesn't even have to be combat. It can be a social encounter, right? It can be a social scene. It can be a puzzle that they're trying to figure out. Whatever they're doing, whatever they're engaged with, I want the focus to be on the players at the table. And one of the things that's really interesting about Xenoplicity is because everyone is acting at the same time, and then everyone narrates together collectively, right?
Yeah.
And so, you as the game master and the players are all creating the fiction out of the results, right? On a, let's say,
Cool.
during a fight, when you would be rolling every turn, and you are rolling for, attacks, and things like that. You are all building on each other, right? So, me as the game master, I can narrate the NPC making their attack, and what that looks like. And then the players get to jump in and say, and I do this, and I do this, and this is what this looks like. And because it's a minute of abstracted time, they can describe several swings, they can describe, some cool stunts, they can do all of those things in the fiction. And at the end of the turn, maybe they've killed two or three NPCs, right?
Right.
There's something really cool and just electric when at the end of that turn, you can tell the player character like, cool, you've killed 4 people this turn in a sword fight, like describe what all that looks like. And when I've played this with people, like introduced them to it for the first time, and they agreed to play test it, and the look on their face, there's like a light bulb that goes off when there's this aha moment, and they go, okay, cool. So I get to kill 3 people over the course of this one turn. I get to take out 3 NPCs, and I get to narrate all the ways that looks. And you don't have to look anything up in the book. You don't have to sit there and worry and kind of number crunch any of that nonsense. You just get to narrate it. You just, based on that one roll you made, let's just narrate it and move on. And when and again, like you said, the fights go a lot quicker. Most combat in this game will take anywhere from 1 to 3 turns to resolve, and even
Hmm.
that can even be big fights. I mean, you can throw 5 or 10 enemies at a player character or a group of player characters all at once and have epic, cool showdowns. And it really mimic things like you see in Conan movies or like you see in Lord of the Rings. Where Legolas and
Yeah.
Gimli are taking out people with every swing of the axe and all that. So all that's possible with the Xenoplicity system because of how narrative and free flowing it is.
I like that you've taken the character sheet and you've added everything on here that a player would need to determine in their heads exactly what they need to roll for your effect dice and what you need for your action dice and everything. That's really really clever. One other thing I totally dig here is dividing the mental, physical, and social, and having the will and IQ, the strength and dex, and the charisma and constitution as one over the other in each of those categories. That's pretty clever. Um, and yeah, you have the wound feature down below here for the boxes to fill out during the combats to make it very easy, accessible. And the thing I super love is your hit location idea of taking different dice per different types of animal types. The quadrupeds as opposed to a bipedal critter. That was very clever. I gotta say that was one thing I was going, wow, that is a really interesting way to put together a hit location chart all in one thing. So which is cool. Of course, you only give the basic here. The extended chart is also in the rules as well, so you can see the different areas that would be possibly hit. So that is a cool thing. So other questions I have here are um
Just real quick, the hit location thing, it works really good during gameplay.
yeah.
There's a lot of people online that really hate on hit location charts, and
Mm.
a lot of I get a lot like there's a lot of videos on YouTube where I see people like saying, "Oh, they don't work good," or I've never seen one that works great. And it kind of leaves me scratching my head to a degree because I mean I don't, admittedly, a lot of the games I play don't have them.
Right.
But when I was putting this together, we went through a couple variations, but you're right, we had to have something that would work for different types of creatures because Xenoplicity offers a huge degree of creatures to pick from. You can play a ton of different things using this system, and
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get to that here in a little bit. But the setting includes post-apocalypse, sci-fi, and fantasy. There are, all kinds of different creatures in here. Anything from an actual dragon to an angel to a demon. There's rules in the game for playing all of those things, and so we needed a hit location that would suffice for whatever you're playing. But it works really well because during, again, your during that act step, if you take a hit, right, then you as the player, you don't need to be prompted. You don't need to look anything up in the book. You just roll the die that that goes for your type of creature, and then you know where you were hit, and then you'll role play that out accordingly. Like, what does it mean you got hit in the back? Well, you tell me. What does that look like? How
Mm.
and so again, the idea isn't that it isn't that you can't be creative, it's the opposite. It's that it sparks creativity, right? Things you may never have thought to actually narrate out during a fight, this provokes that. What does it
Right.
look like to get hit in your arm, right? Are you going to drop your sword, or can you hold on to it, right? And what's that going to look like going forward for you suffering from a wound there, so whether it's a bruise or an injury? Did you break your arm, right? The game has rules for this. So, if you do break your arm, well, now you have to role play a broken arm until you heal it,
Right.
that it's really cool. It works really good for making these fights very cinematic because there's real stake. We don't have hit points in this game, so you
Yeah.
like you said, there's well, technically there are hit points in the game, but for a player character, typically you're using the wound tracker, which is what you see there on screen. And so if you just take one damage and your armor doesn't soak it, then that's a bruise, which is a minor wound. It's not going to be terrible. But if you take 2 points of damage, then it's an injury in that location, and that's
Hmm.
that's going to be a lot worse, and it's also going to
Yeah.
take a lot longer to heal. And then if you take more than 2 damage, then you either suffer a disability, which could be permanent, or you're just killed outright. And so there's real stakes when you fight. Even if you win the fight, if you end up with a couple of bruises, well, those bruises can take weeks, to heal, and injuries can take months. So now, granted, magic and maybe some sci-fi tech might be able to speed that up, of course, but
Sure.
there's real consequences to combat when you do get into it.
Right on. Right on. Yeah. I also notice your conditions here. So you cover quite a bit of territory that you would find like in Call of Cthulhu and stuff like that, that you've integrated into this system, which is very cool. Even guilt. I would have never thought about putting guilt in there, but that's kind of a cool role play aspect that a lot of players kind of miss, or dismiss. So if you got good players, they will act upon those things, and that's I'm always looking for good players to pop in and play our games, of course. Um, so
And
awesome
that's
on
a
that.
that's a good that's a good point because those conditions, they also prompt role play, because granted, each box gives you a penalty, right? So if you're cold, and you're going to have a little penalty from that. These things stack, right? So if
Yeah.
you're sick and you're cold, well, now you're struggling a little bit more. But like you said, if you've got a guilty conscience, well, then you're not 100% focused on what you're doing. Like there's something weighing on your mind. And the people we play with, and when they play with this, the first box is trivial, so it's a minor thing, but you still role play that out accordingly. And the second box would be serious. So this is like a grave situation. It means you're ridden with guilt if you had 2 boxes of guilt checked off. And so again, these are great cues because it reminds the player to role play certain things, right? If you've got a box checked off of cold, well, then they're going to role play their character being cold, and you as the game master, you don't have to say anything about it. It's on their character. They're the ones role playing it, and these are great reminders of all the things they need to be role playing in the scene. And We had a situation where one of my players, they were stressed out. They had stress, and they were tired. And so when you have a tired box, you're stressed, right? They were role playing out, shivering and starting to nod off every time they stopped and took a breather. And again, it adds like an immersion to the game that you just don't get in a lot of other games by default, because a lot
Yeah.
of games don't really talk about these things. These are things that are really never brought up. And if you have good role players, you can still do it, right? That doesn't mean you can take any tabletop role playing game, and if you have good role players, they can role play out all of these things without them being on a character sheet. But I,
Yes.
I find when they are on the character sheet, it's a great little cue, a great little reminder. And it all, again, there's different stakes other than how many hit points do I have left, right? These are things that maybe there's a penalty associated with them, but there's also role play opportunities for how to act it out right at the table. How are you demonstrating it?
Gotcha. Yes, exactly. And I think, yeah, that's like I say, that's great to throw onto a character sheet. Always prompts that player to remember. So yeah, sometimes that as a player, you got so many things going on in your head, and to have your sheet there to remind you, that's cool. We try not to, as our own play, in our own games, we try not to rely too much on our like looking at your character sheet, like a bingo sheet. You're filling out but this is at least this is super functional for the role play aspect of it, which I like. And yeah, it's something that I wouldn't mind trying this as a player, playing in a game with a game master that, or the what you call it, the director
Director.
has situated a scenario for us that would be very cool. What now? If you were to like, are you considering like there might be some more customizations coming along in this iteration of Xenoplicity? Are you planning maybe of a like a updated kind of updating the rules a bit as you continue on, or do you think that this is the end all of Xenoplicity? This is going to be how this game is perceived from here on.
That's a good question. It's one of those things where anytime you create something, you're always your worst critic.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found that the things I put out, I'm always very self conscious about it because like I want, if I'm going to put something out there and I want people to purchase it, I want people to become invested in it. I want it to be perfect in every way. The thing is, nothing ever is. And no matter how much you want to tweak it and change it, you don't want to become like a George Lucas, right? Where you're
Right.
constantly going back and trying to re-edit your film. Like, just let it stand, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It is what it is, and it's got a charm and a love to what it is based on what it is. And so while we did go back to the drawing board and we came up with I think mechanics that actually are better suited for our fiction than what we want to do. And also I think mechanics that I think more players would appreciate if they gave it a chance. That's another
Right.
thing. How accessible is it to everyone? I mean, I'm very specific in the way that I play at my table, but not everybody plays like me. And when you're
Mm-hmm.
making a product for the masses, you need to make something that the majority of people, if they were willing to try it out, would they have fun doing it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it something that they go, man, that was really cool? And that's, trying to find like a happy medium with for your vision and also what people will find appealing. That's
Right.
the challenge. Only time's going to tell how much this takes off and how many people play it. I hope people are willing to give it a chance because,
Sure.
like you said, even if it's not your favorite system, I think this game and the content that's in it provides you with role play tips. It gives you game master advice. It gives you lots of charts and tables that you can use, and the setting and all the things that are in the setting, we put that in its own chapter so that the setting is not mixed in with the mechanics in a
Right.
way where you could use the setting even if you didn't use the mechanics, or you could use the mechanics without using the setting. um, I don't plan on releasing like another version of Xenoplicity per se, but we are working on putting out some conversion kits for free.
Oh.
They're not going to be something that we charge money for because we don't have
I,
the rights to any of these things, but I
right.
would like to put out like a little free to download conversion kit for like how to do Star Wars with Xenoplicity, how to do Call of Cthulhu with Xenoplicity. I think I could put out little things like that free for just people that are fans of the system, and just give you ideas and tips for how to do this, how to make a character if you wanted to play in the Star Wars universe, that kind of thing.
Cool.
But since I don't own the rights to any of those things, that would just all be things I just put out there for fun. It wouldn't be for money or for anything like that. No.
Yeah, understandable for sure, for sure. Off the record, hey, if you ever have time to go ahead and run us through a game as a director, me and Crispy and Big Bad, we're all full on role players, so we would love it if you ever ran a quick, short, just one session, maybe 90-minute long scenario for us, and we get it out there for you, and more people will see how your game is played, and hopefully we can do it justice for you. So if
I
we're
would love
just
that.
putting
That'd
out
be
there.
really cool.
Okay,
That'd
so
be really cool.
if you
Hey,
ever
I'm
just
always down. it's so, but yeah, I tried to make the character sheet very functional, and
Hmm.
also another thing about when I was designing it and trying to put it together and figuring out what worked and what didn't. A thing that really drives me up the wall is character sheets that are more than one page. I can't stand. I don't know why every
Yeah.
game has a character sheet that's 2, 3, or 4 pages long. It's like I don't want to have a book. To play the game,
Yeah. Yeah.
like and is filling all that out. And so it was very important to me that I did it on one page and then I have all the references on the page that a player would need to know because I'm expecting the player to calculate their dice pools, to roll their dice, to roll for their own hit locations when they get hit, right?
Hmm.
To mark down their wounds, right? All of those things to make luck rolls for themselves when they're called for, to roll for initiative as needed, and I want them to have all that information on the character sheet because I don't want anyone to have to stop and look something up in the book.
Right.
Not during the game, right? You can do that when you pause the game, right? I'm not saying you can't reference. Of course, you need to reference the book from time to time, but because everyone is playing together at the same time and there aren't turns, it was very important for me to have quick references on the character sheet because you don't have the downtime in Xenoplicity like you have in a lot of games, right? A lot of games you act and then you have however many minutes before it comes back around to you, but that's
Hmm.
not the case in Xenoplicity. In the Xenoplicity, everybody is going together or all acting at the same time. And so it's a good idea about once an hour to take a break, to pause the game, refill drinks, get some snacks, talk across the table.
Yeah.
That way you still have the camaraderie. That way you still have your fun get together with your friends and it's not breaking the immersion of the gameplay. But because it's all happening simultaneously and the fiction keeps going, there's no turn order, there's really no downtime like at the table for you to be looking things up in a book or even to be outside the fiction when you're playing the game.
Yeah.
So you take breaks so that way you still have those opportunities.
Yeah. I always have my own rule that I never have the book open anymore at the table. So but the thing is, if you're on full role play mode, and that's what I mean, full role play during combat, during social, during every kind of situation, that time flies like you wouldn't believe. And that 90 minutes that we commit to having our game can easily reach 2 hours if I don't have the little dial up there saying, how long we've been recording for and that sort of thing. So, that when you're all in role play mode, I find the time just goes like crazy. It's almost like a cinematic movie experience happening, and everything's running nice and smooth, and boom, 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 and you're going from one scene to the other. It's a great thing, I've done the what I call the two-dimensional gaming myself, a lot, and I have lots of examples of it in my old videos and showing that kind of stuff. And it was a struggle for me to go from 2D, what I call 2D role playing, to 3D role playing, which is being in character and everything. So, and game mastering, I found, was a real challenge in that kind of thing, letting go of a lot of desire to control a lot of things. So, including my own dice rolls and all that kind of stuff. It's been a ride for me to get into it. I know it's not for everybody. So, a lot of people will stay in their little, stay back a little bit and let everybody else take control of the scene. But having this kind of a design where everybody is uh, bringing in their input, your role players are gonna end up role playing it out. It may become infectious to the ones that kind of stand back and just want to roll the dice. They might want to go ahead and start describing stuff themselves. So I see it kind of being uh, uh, a catalyst to bring that out in a player or two. Yeah, and keep
Hope
in
so.
mind, keep in mind, there are some that can't imagine and can't, they want to have the miniatures and everything on the board. Yeah, it's a thing, and some people, can't do that, but they can. I've had a couple players where they had that thing where they can't imagine things. And I've had to worked a bit with them, and I got them to start describing exactly what their players are doing. So that's it's a cool thing to have a game that promotes this kind of play as well. So it's good to see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
much theater of the mind.
Yes.
The game is not designed to be played with map and minis. Now, could
Yeah.
you? Yeah, you could. And some people use map and minis very specifically, like they want to move one, two, three spaces. Other people use it more abstract to kind of have a visual representation of a room or of where the player characters are. I get it. Like there's different ways people play.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan personally of using map and minis. It's just again, it in my personal opinion, you're going into the realm of board game, and that's why I
Yes.
think I said in my role play video that I did a couple days ago that you guys were commenting on is, in my opinion, games like D&D or like the Fantasy Trip that you see back here, I
Yep.
think that they promote two-dimensional or even one-dimensional role play because it's fundamentally a board game, right?
Yes.
Your movement allowance is in spaces,
Yeah.
right? And so, if your movements in spaces, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about spaces on a board. You're not thinking about the fiction and being that person in the fictional setting. And so there's a disconnect there, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
you're
but that doesn't
more
mean
yeah, you're out of the person, you're more of a third person kind of aspect when you're playing these games. Yeah. I do have the full box fantasy trip up above. Not on this shelf, but on the one beside it. I've got the box set that you have. Plus I have the what's it called? The Decks of Destiny as well. I invested in that one too.
really
Yep.
quick, anyone who's like watching this, if you're wondering what initiative is in our game, since I said there's no turns, like
Mhm.
what is initiative? Initiative in this game, you roll it at the very beginning of the game session before you even start playing. The two highest results get initiative tokens, and you can spend those tokens at any time to just get an automatic success at whatever it is you're doing. You can,
Mm.
if you have two, you can get two automatic successes, and so this is again just another way to speed up gameplay at the table for things that would normally require a roll. You don't have to. You don't even have to roll for it. You can just spend the tokens and just automatically succeed and narrate those things accordingly.
Ah,
Or you
okay.
could roll in advance and then you could add on to whatever you rolled with initiative tokens. So it's a way of gauging momentum for especially during combat. But you can spend them in anything. It doesn't have to be combat related. You can spend the initiative tokens in any way during the game. There's really no distinction in the gameplay of Xenoplicity between combat, social, or mental actions. The game works seamlessly the same no matter what you're doing. You're
Right
going
on.
to be doing the same mechanics. There's no like separation between combat versus everything else. It's all using the same system. You're just using different talents or attributes or skills to figure out what your ER is depending on what it is you're trying to do. Now there is a different turn order, although it still works in the same method. There is a slightly different turn order for scenes. So we have
Mm.
scene turns as opposed to encounter turns, right? So an encounter turn, one turn is 1 minute, but not everything needs to be that closed in. So we have what we call scene turns, and these things they follow the same format. You're going to describe the scene, and then the players will act, and then you're going to narrate accordingly at the
Hmm.
end of it. But these are going to take place either over 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 20 minutes of time. And so for things like chases through the streets or things like, going through a dungeon room, you're going to usually use these kind of turns because again, it's even more abstract because you're covering, 10 minutes of time, give or take.
Right.
And again, if then you're at a party and you guys are all like hanging out with different people, well, then you would just use a scene turn. You don't need to focus so much on every minute of the party, but what happens over 10 minutes at the party? And then you just
Yeah.
narrate it accordingly. You're just role
Okay.
playing it out.
Cool. It sounds very flexible in that way. So if for anybody's listening, it's a very malleable system to have your scenes in different timings, so to speak, I guess, which is cool. Other questions that were asked. What does xenoplicity mean? What is that just the name of the game, or was there any insight and thought that you had?
Well,
with that?
it's a word I made up,
Cool.
so that was important. I needed a name for the game that, wasn't already in use, of course, but actually it actually is in the fiction of the game. Xenoplicity is one of the mega corporations in the setting. So
Hmm.
it's one of the galactic mega corporations, and what they do is they basically, are a galactic real estate company. They chart space, and then they sell things that they find there, whether it be
Ah,
planets or asteroid belts. They sell it to other companies or to people, right? So, that it worked kind of like on a double meaning. It's a megacorp in the game that's, arguably like probably the most important megacorp among the Galactic Imperium kind of thing, just because of what they do. They're all about space exploration, exploring the unknown, and then also, the idea that, Xeno and, the idea of being foreign or alien or different, right? And then, plicity, I was going for like simplicity. So there's a lot of different species that you can play in the game,
oh
and we
yeah,
try to make it easy and simple.
yeah. You,
So I thought
it's
that that worked.
yeah. Yeah. You give like brief little descriptions on like different character archetypes in there, like different species that you can play. Which is neat. You give little notes on what kind of advantages they would have and stuff like that. So you can play all kinds of different creatures, not just humans, but you have you can be dwarven, you could be elvish. You got little quirks and things that you've written out for each one of them, which is pretty neat. And as a game master or director in this kind of case, it's definitely you can go ahead and manipulate them to be, more of the Middle Earth kind of, dwarf, or do you want the dwarf from, Dwarf Fortress, kind of thing. It's all up to you, but you give a baseline there for everything in all the different character types, and yeah, it's super cool. Um,
Yeah, and I
let's see.
wanted to, something I wanted to do with the fiction, with the setting. I needed it to make it, my own, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because here's the thing: people can always strip out the setting and replace it with whatever they want to do anyway.
Yeah.
And I fully anticipate people should do that with my game, just like they do with every other game, right? Like, that's what we all do, right?
Yeah.
We find a system we like, and maybe it comes to the setting, maybe it doesn't, but all of us are going to make the game our own, because we're all, on some level, every game master is a creator. They're a content
Right.
creator. They're their own, they're using their own mind's eye to create a world or a setting that they want to play games in.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted to do that. I wanted to offer something different and unique. So there was a reason to use the setting and not just have it be like, default the same old. I didn't want to copy off of D&D. Now, don't get me wrong, we still have all the fantasy species that you might find in D&D, and I do call them species, not because of any political woke correctness nonsense. I don't have anything wrong with the word race in the when we're talking about, Tolkien-esque things, but I call them species because they can't create half breeds. An
Right.
elf can only procreate with an elf. A dwarf can only procreate with a dwarf. They're just different species in my game, and plus, it's assuming, you're taking the setting as we present it, then we're presenting you with an entire galaxy. So these are all different aliens. They're all different alien species, and the fantasy creatures come from a fantasy planet. It's our planet of mythos, and this is the planet where you find the fantasy like species.
Hmm.
And so you've got dragons and orcs, and you've got all those things, but we put a unique spin on all of them. And so, like, for instance, goblins are fire spirits, and bugbears are shadow spirits. They have special abilities. They have special things that make them unique and different from what you might find in other fantasy settings. And so, again, there's, maybe it sparks ideas and creativity, like, that you were like, man, I never really thought about this, but that's cool.
Right.
Or maybe you don't like that, and then you strip it out. You just say, okay, well, no, goblins aren't fire spirits in my game. They're just going to be goblins.
Right.
You can always dumb it down if you want. Then, it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but we tried to put a little spin on it. I mean, you have dragons in this game, and they are legitimate, full size dragons. And we have, they have their own little thing. When they reach a certain age, they suffer from their own level of like kind of like dementia, where
Right.
they get corrupted, they become evil, they become monstrous, and they grow to tremendous size. But even before that, you can play if you play like an elder dragon or a middle aged dragon. They're massive creatures. They're still getting up to 100 feet in size. And so, do you want to play that? You could make characters. You could have an entire party, a whole table of 100-foot dragons. And if that's
Right.
what you wanted your game to be, you can totally do it using Xenoplicity. And it's things like that there's really not a lot of games out there that even try to tackle that subject. Like what other game is there out there that you could even do something like that, rules as written, with what comes in the core book?
Yeah.
I wanted to present something that's different. So where when you get Xenoplicity, you're able to experience something that you're not getting from any of the games you already have on your shelf. Again, we talked a little bit about the fantasy aspect of it. There's a lot of creatures in the fantasy setting that you can play, and you can have situations between barbaric and civilization, civilized society. There's kind of like warring factions on the planet we present, with you. But beyond that one fantasy world, that's just one world out of the galaxy, right? So you also can play on Earth, and so we actually give you a post-apocalypse setting. And so the in the fiction, in about well, actually a couple years ago is when our Earth was invaded. So
Ah.
it's already past the date where that happened. So we're in an alternate timeline, from life now. But basically, Earth gets invaded and it gets conquered. So humanity is basically driven, not to extinction, but they're definitely, everything is chaotic and in turmoil on Earth. Humans have kind of divided into two different camps. You have the Outlanders, which are people that just survive out into the wilderness and they're just struggling to survive. And then you have vassals, and these are people that have accepted alien, overlords. They're living
Hmm.
under the thumb of the aliens in sanctuary cities. And so, what do you play? Do you want to live in an advanced Uber society of humans, but that you are basically in subjection to an alien overlord or alien rulers that maybe just they take people in the middle of the night, they experiment on them. You're basically guinea pigs in their little cities that they've presented. But as long as they don't do that to you, then you're safe, right? And
Right.
enough time has passed in the fiction, because you can either play in the late 20s, you can play in the 30s or 40s, depending on how far in the future you want to take the game. And we give you little tiny little suggestions in a sidebar about what it might look like at this point, right? But you can do with it whatever you want. But the idea being is that people they've accepted that that live under the aliens. Now they've become indoctrinated to think that the aliens are actually their friends,
Hmm.
because they take care of them, and then they
Right.
they cure disease, and they make life safe, right? But you're a slave, for better or worse. Or do you live out in the wilderness where the ruins of yesteryear, and you're dealing with the threats and dangers that come with that. You can play a game in those two different things, and both of those are going to have very vastly different feels. And maybe you start off in a city, but you break a law and they throw you out into the wastelands, and now you're really a fish out of water. You can do all that with the game. Or you can be in space. You can play on the galactic setting that we give you, and we have galactic advanced alien species, and rules for building a starship, and energy weapons and power armor, and all those things are there too. So it
Well,
really, you can. But if you just wanted, I know fantasy is the big go to with most tabletop role playing games. It's by far the biggest genre, and so if that is your game, if that's all you care about, and you could care less about everything else, well then just don't use everything else. You can still use the Xenoplicity system and play any kind of fantasy game, and just never venture into the stars, never worry about what's on Earth, right?
right.
It is what it is. You're just on that one world,
Yeah, I'm glad
and it would be
glad you
just fine.
you 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 put you ended up putting in those aspects in your book. It gives potential director to come in and see it all and go, I can do this, or I could do this, and it just he just gets bombshelled with cool ideas that you have in all your random tables and everything as well too. So Yeah, I really like what you have put together, so I definitely want to try it and get my players into it as well, perhaps for a session or two, and see how it goes. That'll be it's pretty awesome. I'd rather have a hard copy than a PDF. I find reading the hard copy a lot easier. And I know you're the person that you have running the drive-through RPG. He did say that you guys are going to be coming up with a hardcover copy of this pretty soon.
Yes.
Any information on that, or do you have anything to say about how that's going?
It's coming.
Okay,
It's been kind of just kind of a long process to get everything approved through Drive Through RPG. But we're going to offer it in hardback and softback, both standard and premium quality. So you'll
cool.
be able to pick it up in any of those. I honestly don't know when Drive Through is going to greenlight us on that, but hopefully it's not more than a couple weeks because it's been in the works. It's been in the works for a while. It's just maybe they're just backed up. I think that they just stay pretty busy and they just have a lot of projects that they're trying to help at the same time. So,
Yeah.
but as soon as those proofs get approved, then we're going to greenlight those and then they'll pop up. So
S-
yeah, we'll definitely offer it in hard. I'm like you. The PDF's nice, especially maybe before you buy it in hardback or softback to
Yeah.
look at a PDF and see, okay, is this worth having? But I like having something in my hands. I like to actually have something tangible and physical. And it's hard for me to accept just a PDF
That's right.
format, by itself.
Yeah, you never know when the internet goes down, or a computer goes and or whatever. I want to have my hard copy, just and that's been the bane of my wife's existence, of me getting hard copies all the time. So she's like, "Why do you have so many books?"
There's so much stuff. I mean, the thing is because the game is so robust, and I'm not trying to say that just to brag about it, but
No.
there's a lot of content in the book. It has a lot of different things you
Yeah.
can do. There's
Yeah.
psionics, there's magic, there's bionics, there's superpowers. All of those things are laid out in the core book. I didn't. I'm a big fan of everything being in one book. I
Mhm.
don't like stringing people along, and like most of the books on my shelf here, I've bought like all these splat books and I've got all these different content. So it's not that
Yeah.
I'm opposed to other companies doing it, but for my own game, because one of the things I've always complained about is like, man, I don't want to have carry around a backpack full of books to play a session. And so I really wanted to put everything in one book and to make it clear and easy to read and easy to find things. And I hope I've achieved that. People like the feedback I've gotten so far is that people like the way the book is laid out. It's clear, it makes sense, and I try to be very precise about the chapters and the way it's laid
Mhm.
out in the in the format. But there's so much there. The magic system alone, I think, is worth having Xenoplicity for. It To me, it beats every magic system that I've ever played, except for maybe a couple that I would I think tie with it. Because of just how amazing it is and how free flowing it is and how you can do really anything with it that you want to as a wizard,
Cool.
or a magic user or whatever term you want to give yourself. Um, there's just so much there, right? I've got
Yeah.
rules in here for playing a lich, for playing a vampire, for playing a werewolf. Right? And again, maybe you never use those things, but if you wanted to, they're in there, right? So you can just take it and just run with it down whatever
Yeah.
path you want to what you want to do as a game master.
And I see you do have a lot of videos on your channel, and I'm going to put the link underneath as well, so that people can go ahead and check out your stuff, because you talk quite a bit about each of the chapters, the how combat is run, all the different aspects of your game are all posted on there. You even basically show the entire book throughout all your videos. So which is a good kind of primer for players to see whether or not it's something that they would want to get into or not. So those links will be down below, and I encourage everybody to go ahead and check out this system, see whether or not it's something that you would like to try with your group. I mean, it's all there. You can decide from yourself from Matt's videos. And it's all very clear. He's got some great role play tips and stuff like that. He explains himself very well on a lot of aspects there, which I enjoy. And yeah, encourage everybody to check his stuff out and subscribe to him. Let him know, give him some love. So
I appreciate that.
yeah,
We've also got a couple of modules that we've got on drive through right now
I've
you can
seen
get for
that.
PDF. Yeah, so one of them is like a modern day murder mystery kind of thing
Okay.
that's fun to play out and really is really cool. The other one is a fantasy setting like that you can use. It's very sandboxy, so you can run with the little plot hooks and rumors and all those things that we put in there, or just use the setting itself and just make it your own. You can do that too. We're still working on some additional modules that we'll have coming out for people that want to have something to kind of like as a springboard to like, hey, what adventures do I play with Xenoplicity? Well, you can play anything with Xenoplicity, and really, I mean, the goal is for you to make it your own and for you to make your own adventures. But we want to offer some modules, so at least
Okay.
it gives you kind of like something to run with and pick up. I enjoy having modules, if for that reason, So I wanted to offer that for my own game too.
Oh
We're gonna
yeah.
have one coming out, God willing. We'll have one for like a sci-fi, and we'll have one for post-apocalypse. Those are going to come. They're in the works, but they're actually still in play testing because every module that I do, I put it through a lot of play testing to make sure that I kind of work out any kinks or any kind of issues that might come up with the fiction that I'm presenting in it. So I want to make sure that it makes sense and that it's things that people can really enjoy.
Okay.
So there's more coming, but there's two that's already out. There's also some books that are out for Xenoplicity. The first one is called Scavenged.
Ah.
So it's a full length novel that takes place in post apocalypse Earth. Scott Arbuckle, he's the author of it. He's the author that wrote the prologue and the epilogue in the core book.
Oh.
And so he's got that out, and the second novel he's got coming out soon, and that's Augmented. And so it keeps the story going. And there's going to be a third book eventually. So there's novels there. If you're curious or interested in that, that's a great way to kind of dive deeper into the fiction of what's going on, in the post-apocalypse kind of setting of Earth, and to kind of see like what we do with that. So
Awesome.
there's things out there like that you can use or if you're curious or if you want to. I really enjoy those books. I think that they're a lot of fun, and I like the direction Scott kind of takes the stories. I think it's pretty cool.
Okay. They're not based on any of your adventures with the group. Is it his own kind of fiction on what you've created?
They're not actually based on adventures that we've ran in the
Oh,
game,
okay.
but they are. But some of these characters that are in the books are characters that we came up with
Oh,
as we were building the fiction of Xenoplicity.
cool.
It's one of those things where the fiction for it has been growing over the decade or so that we've been playing around with this setting, and so again with the core book, I've included all those things that we've done and added to it, and so it just makes it like there's just a lot there. Personally, I think the prologue especially it's one of the it's like kind of funny, but it's like a really fun little short story, and I love that. I love having little stories like that are in the book. Now again, they're separate from the rules. I don't mix my fiction with my mechanics. It's kind of a pet peeve when games mesh them together because then you're like, where's the rules? Like I don't
Yeah.
where does the fiction end and the rules begin? So I wanted to keep them separate, but to
Cool.
put a little flavor, to put a little feel in there, and I think they're just a lot of fun to read. They leave me like with a little chuckle. At least the prologue does. The epilogue's more serious, but they're both good. They're great little short stories, and the novels are great too. And Scott's a good friend, and it's been a lot of fun working with him with this over the years. And the core book also comes with 3 quick start adventures in the back, one for post-apocalypse, one for fantasy, and one for sci-fi. So even if you just wanted to pick it up, read over the rules, make a character, and then play through a short little mini adventure, it's there. Like I wanted to have everything in there. I even put half-page character sheets in there. So
Oh,
there's two different methods of character creation. There's the full length, and then there's the quick start method. And the quick start method basically leaves out all of the fluff that you might want to have as a character, right? Your backstory and all the details of that, because there's some people that don't want to roll all that out or don't want
right.
to flesh all that out before the game starts. Some people, they like to just have the bare bones of the character, and then maybe over the first session be able to narrate those things and kind of play with it as it comes up in the fiction. And so we provided alternative game creation or character creation. So depending on, your style and what you want to do, you can just make a fully fleshed out character that has a full backstory and everything using the roll charts and using the method that we give you, or you can just make a character really quick and easy and just have the mechanical parts done, and then you can, jot notes down on the back of the sheet whenever you want. And so, again, it's because I've played the games. I've played these kind of games for so long, over so many years. It's things like this that I wish you saw more in tabletop role playing games. Like, why isn't there a half-page character sheet, in a streamlined version in a core book for most of the games that get made? I feel like I wish there was more innovation and more, things like that that players really appreciate, but you just don't see it in a lot of games today.
Yeah.
And maybe one day, maybe one day that changes. But I tried to make it user friendly, and I tried to make it player friendly for the format and also for the systems I put in place. So.
Cool. 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 I guess we could close this off. Anything else that you would like to say?
Well, just I wanted to say thank you, man. I
Oh,
really love your channel. I love your content. I watch you like all your videos. I don't want to sound weird and stalky. Like I watch you. No, no. I really enjoy watching your videos.
right
I've
on.
really enjoyed your live streams.
Yeah.
I think, like the way you put yourself out there and show what it is you're talking about, like through your live streams and the 4D role playing, they're a lot of fun, man.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it, and I like the content you put out there. Both you and Shauner, I'm a big fan of you guys and what you're doing for the hobby. And it's one of those things where I'm very thankful and very appreciative that you're, having me on. And so
Oh,
thank you
no,
very
no
much. It
problem.
means a lot to me.
Yeah, I anytime that we see somebody that's kind of, in that same kind of mind, similarity with the role play and everything, we definitely want to go ahead and, you know, uh, boost them up. Not like I can really boost up, but Shauner's channel, he's a little bit larger than mine, but we're kind of an acquired taste. So, anyways, it's almost close. You're probably pressed for time here, eh? But
Yeah, I got to
uh,
get going. I
yeah,
got worship service tonight. I'm a Christian, so I go to church on Wednesdays and Sundays.
right on, right on. So yeah, thanks again for showing up and explaining your game Xenoplicity, Matt. Awesome to have you on here and to pick your brain a little bit. And I hope to see you on here again. You are most welcome to show up now that you know where I'm at and everything. Just if you're like, me, I have an idea. Maybe I can talk to this with Rick, and maybe he can invite Shauner in or whatever. Just give me a shout, and we can make it all happen. Alrighty.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Rick, and thanks for everybody who's stuck around and watched us. Bye, Xenoplicity.
Right on.
So you guys have a great day.
Links down below. Thanks again.